He was 20 when he took the throne, 30 when he died. In between, Alexander burned cities, broke kings, and carved a path from Greece to the edge of India. His men followed him through deserts, over frozen passes, into battles no sane army would fight, driven by loyalty, fear, and something like awe. This is the story of a boy raised on Homer, who made myth into strategy and glory into policy. The world bent beneath his boots, but even he couldn't outrun the weight of a crown. Step into the ancient halls of Pella, where in the dim glow of flickering lamps, a child was born who would change the face of the world. This is the tale of Alexander, a young boy destined not just for kingship, but legendary greatness. In 356 BCE, Queen Olympias gave birth to a son she claimed was touched by the gods themselves, a claim bolstered by a fiery comet streaking through the night sky. To the ancient Macedonians, Alexander was more than a prince. He was an heir of divine and regal power, a blend of myth and monarchy. His father, King Philip II, envisioned an empire where his son would be the spearhead. Philip had transformed Macedon from obscurity to power, subjugating Greece through strategic war and diplomacy. Alexander's upbringing was a concoction of the divine aspirations woven by Olympias and the astute, earthy strategies of Philip. He was raised amidst rumours of celestial descent and saw his future laid upon a world ripe for conquest, a role he would fulfill through intellect and iron. From an early age, Alexander was enveloped in the sounds of hooves and the cries of warriors, training among the fields. There he met Bucephalus, the wild stallion that only he could tame, earning his place as a natural leader who could conquer the untamable. This bond with Bucephalus foreshadowed Alexander's destiny to lead, not just through force, but through understanding and empathy, embracing a connection that others missed. The young prince's education took a giant leap forward when Aristotle became his mentor. For 3 formative years under Mises' ancient trees, Alexander absorbed the wisdom of philosophy, science and ethics. Aristotle's teachings expanded his mind beyond mere conquests on the battlefield to the subtleties of governance and the diversity of human nature. Alexander learned that power was as much about knowledge as it was about might, a notion he would later apply in his attempts to unify the vast lands he conquered. While his mind was being shaped by philosophy, his body was hardened for the brutal realities of war. Macedonian military training was unyielding, blending discipline with innovation. Here Alexander developed into a leader who inspired fierce loyalty and commanded respect, qualities that allowed him to lead not only armies but build empires. His prowess quickly surpassed that of his instructors, proving his prowess in both conventional tactics and innovative strategy. Within the political shadows of Macedon, intrigue simmered. Olympias was a formidable force, weaving alliances and enmities with precision, claiming that Alexander was Zeus's child, a narrative that cemented his divine lineage and legitimacy within the cutthroat realm of court. Yet power bred peril, and Alexander learned the craft of politics in an environment where betrayal lurked in trusted hearts. Such knowledge would prove invaluable as he navigated the treacheries of power. By the time he was 16, Alexander was already leading men into battle. Left to guard Macedon during Philip's campaigns, he crushed rebellions, earning his soldiers' respect and sowing the seeds of his legend. The pressures of leadership under his father's gaze moulded him, cementing skills that he would later deploy across foreign lands. Surrounded by a cohort of companions like Hephaestion, Ptolemy, and Cassander, Alexander was part of a bonded group whose names would echo through history. Together they shared battles and ambitions, though jealousy and rivalry were never far. Even among friends, Alexander grasped the delicate balance between loyalty and suspicion, a duality that would haunt him through his conquests. Olympias' influence was profound, teaching him not just through words but through the power of spiritual and political manoeuvring. Her immersion in mystical rites and skill in intrigue taught Alexander the delicate art of manipulation, a necessary tool for any ruler of an empire as sprawling and diverse as the one he aimed to create. Beneath the surface of a disciplined prince lay an unquenchable thirst for adventure and conquest. Filled with dreams inspired by Homer's epics, Alexander envisaged glory beyond the Macedonian frontiers. Early ventures showed glimpses of his extraordinary ambition, painting a portrait of a youth restless to leave his mark upon the world. As he stood on the brink of his ambitious journey, Alexander embodied the merge of myth and man, his path hinted at by countless oracles, and defined by the shadows and ambitions of those around him. With fate beckoning him into the annals of history, his story began not as a mere chronicle of battles, but a tale woven with the passions, fears and dreams of an extraordinary figure poised to conquer the known world. In the tumultuous world of ancient Macedon, King Philip II cast a formidable shadow. A strategist of unmatched prowess, he bound the scattered Greek city-states into a cohesive force, positioning Macedonia as a burgeoning power poised to challenge the Persian Empire. Yet within the royal court, alliances crumbled and ambitions smouldered beneath a facade of unity. Philip's marriage to Olympias was a tempest of rivalry and suspicion, intensified by his numerous affairs and political manoeuvres. Olympias was not merely a queen, but a skilled player in this dangerous game, fiercely safeguarding her son, Alexander's path to power. Alexander, a youth of extraordinary promise, stood in awe and defiance of his father. Relations were strained further with Philip's union to Cleopatra Eurydice, which threatened Alexander's ascendancy with the birth of a new heir. One notorious feast erupted into a bitter confrontation, publicly embarrassing Philip, and leaving a court rife with intrigue and tension. Loyalties were fragile, as whispers of rebellion and betrayal drifted through the grand halls of Macedon like a gathering storm. This volatile mix laid the groundwork for a climactic upheaval that would change the kingdom's trajectory. The storm broke at a wedding banquet in Aegae, a display of Macedon's power and prestige. The opulent celebration masked an undercurrent of treachery. Within this jubilant gathering, the atmosphere was thick with malice. Philip, in a moment of oversight, entered the hall without his guards, a blunder that proved fatal. Amid the revelry, Pausanias, an aggrieved former lover, lunged forward, his knife finding Philip's heart. Chaos erupted as the king fell, the joyous occasion transforming into a scene of horror. Suspicion hung like a shroud. Was it Olympias, embittered by Philip's latest marriage, or was Alexander somehow implicated? Though the truth remains cloaked in the shadows of history, the assassination plunged Macedon into immediate crisis, thrusting young Alexander into a high-stakes pursuit of power. In the wake of his father's death, the court simmered with suspicion, and the threat of disintegration loomed large. Faced with potential anarchy, Alexander acted with swift decisiveness. Guided by a potent mix of grief and resolve, he swiftly eliminated adversaries, consolidating his claim to the throne. The boy who tamed the wild Bucephalus now manoeuvred the political landscape with deft precision. Winning over the military was paramount. The army's loyalty, honed under Philip, now transitioned to Alexander through a blend of tradition and respect. With the general's pledge to his cause, he stabilised his grip on power, weaving authority from a tapestry of fear and loyalty. Olympias, with her formidable intellect and mystique, was an invaluable ally. Her influence permeated the court like a whisper of destiny, shrouding Alexander in the aura of divine favour. Together they advanced a potent narrative, intertwining Alexander's rule with omens and prophecies that declared him the heir not only to a throne, but to a legacy foretold by the gods. Olympias, feared and revered, fostered this image, encouraging Alexander to embrace his supposed divine heritage. Her machinations ensured his position remained unassailable, forging a partnership that recalibrated the power dynamics in their favour. Determined to quash any threat to his newfound authority, Alexander embarked on a ruthless campaign to purge his court of dissent. Rivals fell swiftly, as Alexander demonstrated that his resolve was forged in two crucibles: personal ambition and tactical necessity. These acts were not born of youthful impulsiveness, but were part of a calculated strategy to cement his rule. The executions resonated through Macedon, a visceral reminder of Alexander's unyielding vision. Through these acts his image crystallized, a king capable of enforcing his will by any means necessary, as rivers of blood underlined the nascent stability of his reign. With domestic threats neutralized, Alexander turned his focus to unifying the Macedonian elite. Recognizing the fragility of power sustained by Philip, he melded honour with ambition, securing allegiance from influential military leaders and nobility. His approach was as much about inspiration as intimidation, leading from the front and sharing in hardships to earn unwavering loyalty. This blend of autocratic command and charismatic leadership forged an ironclad authority that transformed chaotic uncertainty into a resurgent Macedonian destiny. In quashing rebellions, Alexander faced the daunting task of subduing the Greek city-states, long yearning for independence. His tactical brilliance, sharp as the points of his phalanx, swiftly crushed uprisings in Thessaly and Thrace, reinstating order with relentless efficiency. Each victory reaffirmed his dominance, turning aspirations of freedom into epitaphs of defiance crushed by Macedonian might. These campaigns stamped his authority, ensuring internal control and setting the stage for external conquests. From this crucible of conflict, the image of a boy king matured into a monarch of imposing presence. Alexander, once an ambitious youth, now embodied the essence of a ruler whose narratives intertwined destiny with reality. The bond shared with his army, fortified through shared trials, breathed life into a united vision of supremacy. Envisioned as both monarch and legend, Alexander's reign extended beyond power. It became the legend foretold by the stars, a story retold through whispers of eternal conquest. As the foundation of Alexander's legacy solidified, Olympia's whispered legends ignited the seeds of myth. The narrative surrounding his divine roots spread, bolstered by actions that edged toward the fantastical, merging history with legend. Chroniclers wove tales that celebrated his feats, blending fact and fiction to fortify his nascent empire's glory. These mythologies enriched his rule, setting the stage for the epic campaigns that would forge his place in history as Alexander the Great, poised on the brink of a destiny etched in eternity. In the ancient world of the Greek city-states, the air was thick with the scent of rebellion. Athens, Thebes and Sparta, each bearing its own pride and grievances, viewed the rise of young Alexander with a mix of suspicion and defiance. Their histories etched in tales of autonomy filled young hearts with dreams of independence and whispered to the older generation's sense of ancestral glory. The agora buzzed with discussions of resistance, the voices of philosophers and strategists clashing like the bronze of shields. They pondered whether to fight for freedom or submit under the Macedonian yoke. Each decision weighted with the fate of their cities. Thebes emerged as the torchbearer of defiance. The city's leaders misjudged Alexander, seeing more weakness in his youth than strength in his resolve. With hope and pride, Thebes erupted in rebellion, believing itself a bastion of Greek pride. But Alexander responded with ferocity. The siege he cast upon Thebes was swift and devastating. In mere days, Thebes fell, its walls crumbling under the Macedonian force. Alexander spared only temples and poets, a tribute to the culture he revered even in conquest's fury. The once vibrant city lay in ruins, serving as a grim reminder to others of the cost of resistance. Yet Alexander was not solely a conqueror wielding the iron of war. He was a strategist of remarkable depth. He balanced the sword with the olive branch, offering clemency to those who would submit to Macedonian rule. By sparing Athens, an epicenter of culture and philosophy, Alexander showed diplomatic nuance. He recognized that a harsh hand here would only deepen division, so he allowed the Athenians a modicum of self-governance under Macedonian supremacy. This deft political maneuver was a masterclass in balancing dominance with the semblance of unity. Corinth soon became the stage for Alexander's vision of a united Greece. There he summoned disparate city-states, proposing the formation of the Pan-Hellenic League. With words as powerful as armies, he articulated a vision of Greek unity, casting the Persian Empire as the common foe. It was a bold narrative, calling upon shared heritage and common destiny. Corinth became the crucible of Greek unity, with Alexander as the declared hegemon, ushering in an era of collaboration among cities that only recently contended with one another. Yet Sparta remained unmoved, a bastion of defiance amidst a sea of capitulation. Unlike other cities that eventually bent the knee, the Spartans held fast, their pride as rigid as their military formation. Alexander knew that to crush Sparta with force would risk scattering Greek unity like sand in the wind. Instead, he employed a strategy of isolation, applying pressure through political channels and economic manoeuvring, adeptly sidestepping direct conflict. As Alexander's power expanded, the social dynamics within these city-states shifted under new Macedonian policies. Aristocrats wrestled with the tumult of losing autonomy while maintaining prestige, their names hollow echoes in a reorganised hierarchy. Meanwhile, tradesmen and labourers saw new opportunities within the Macedonian framework, their loyalties often shifting in pragmatic pursuit of prosperity. These transformations within Greek society set the stage for an evolving Hellenistic culture, a blend of stability and flux. In the realm of rhetoric, Alexander employed more than just the sword. The power of persuasion, rooted deep in Greek tradition, became an essential tool of his reign. The lessons he learned under Aristotle allowed him to weave narratives that transcended mere conquest, framing Macedonian rule as continuity rather than disruption. He spun a tale where Greek identity found new purpose in the dawn of Eastern campaigns, a storyline that united far-flung city-states in common cause against Persia's spectre. While steel and words were his tools, Alexander also wielded the unseen forces of superstition and prophecy. With calculated precision, he employed myths and divine endorsements to bolster his rule, presenting himself as chosen by the gods to lead. This fusion of mortal ambition with divine providence permeated his conquests, elevating his mortal endeavours into a celestial mandate. In subduing Greece, Alexander had forged more than a kingdom. He sculpted a legacy of unity bound for the East. His campaign had subdued old rivalries and welded Hellenic culture under a singular Macedonian vision. Yet the cohesion was fragile, born of necessity rather than desire. Cities lay in the ash-laden wake of his advance, populations scattered like seeds on the wind. But from these foundations of fire and force, a new era was born, a Hellenic world united in purpose, standing poised on the precipice of further conquests. Their gaze turned east towards the waiting shadows of Eurasia. The journey into legend begins at the Hellespont, the narrow bridge where Europe meets Asia, marking Alexander's first steps into a world ripe for conquest. This crossing isn't merely a passage of land, but a leap into history's embrace, as the young king seeks to etch his name into the annals of time. Standing on the European shores, Alexander's gaze is fixed eastward, not just on new lands but on the promise of eternal glory. His army, a diverse mosaic of warriors, awaits with bated breath, each murmuring their hopes and fears, gripped by the tantalizing prospects of power and plunder. Before venturing across the waters, Alexander makes a poignant detour to Troy, where he pays homage to Achilles, that ancient hero whose mighty shadow looms large over the Greek imagination. Donning storied armour, Alexander evokes the past, a move that imbues his men with the belief they are part of a grand epic. Their ships press forward, cutting through the cool waters of the Hellespont, each rower's oar echoing through the dawn's mist like a hymn to destiny. As they reach Asian soil, the air crackles with the anticipation of history in the making. The Granicus River is where Alexander faces his first trial by fire. The Persian satraps have positioned their forces with cunning intent, ready to quash the ambitions of this brash Macedonian king. The river, swollen with the season's rains, glistens under the sun, a formidable challenge that mirrors the steely resolve needed for what lies ahead. Fear mingles with fervour as Alexander leads his men into the icy embrace of the Granicus, his presence a beacon of audacity and determination. Mounted on Bucephalus, he charges into the watery fray, the clash of armour and the roar of battle converging in a symphony of chaos. In this maelstrom, Alexander is nearly struck down, targeted by Spithridates, a Persian nobleman whose blade seeks to sever the thread of fate. A desperate moment ensues, tension thicker than the surrounding mist, until Clytus the Black intervenes, sundering Spithridates' arm with fierce precision. The near miss between life and death sharpens Alexander's mythos, binding his men to him with unbreakable loyalty. From this brink of mortality, myth and flesh unite, casting Alexander as both mortal prince and demigod commander. The ancient writings of Arrian breathe life into these moments, capturing the precision and passion of the battle. His chronicles reveal the tactical brilliance that defines Alexander, a general whose swift adaptations turn potential defeat into resounding triumph. Through Arrian's detailed narrative, the Granicus becomes more than a battle. It is a vivid tableau where valour dances with chaos, where each warrior's resolve is tested against the tide of fate. Victory at the Granicus does not end with cheers alone. Alexander orders the execution of Greek mercenaries who fought for Persia, branded as traitors to the Hellenic cause. This decision underscores the brutal reality of Alexander's campaign, where ideology eclipses kinship and loyalty to the cause outweighs familial bonds. His soldiers, witnessing this harsh justice, understand the dual promises of glory and survival that their king offers: intense loyalty and merciless discipline, intertwined inextricably. News of this triumph shivers through the Persian Empire, a psychological salvo that precedes Alexander's physical march. Fear of Macedonian might spreads, coaxing some cities to open gates and others to consider defiance a foolhardy path. Alexander's reputation as a conqueror grows, his victories blending physical prowess with strategic finesse, weaving a narrative that blends steel with subtlety and cold pragmatism with fiery ambition. Yet the Persian king, Darius III, underestimates this rising star, regarding Alexander as a transient threat, easily managed. This oversight becomes a critical miscalculation, as the young king's campaigns etch deeper into Persian land, fueled by relentless urgency and tactical acumen. By the time Persia fully comprehends the Macedonian threat, Alexander has already rewritten the balance of power, his presence a permanent stain on the canvas of their empire. The geography of the Granicus, a field of shifting tides and treacherous banks, tests but ultimately magnifies Alexander's resolve. The river, a natural fortification for the Persians, becomes a crucible where his audacious strategies transform the landscape from hindrance to pathway of conquest. Alexander's genius lies in using geography as both adversary and ally, forging victory through intellect as much as through might. In the shadow of Granicus, his campaign casts long silhouettes over the ancient world. The battle fortifies Alexander's standing, not just with his troops, but as a force that begins to remap the political terrain of Asia. It signals the opening of existential discussions among Persian satraps, some swayed by the Macedonian star, others resigned to fate's reshuffling of allegiances. Historians will later muse over these moments, where history tilted on the axis of a narrow riverbank. The legend of Alexander, rooted in the waters of the Granicus, and nourished by the blood spilt there, becomes a testament to ambition, unrestrained by human frailty. As victories unfold, each shapes an empire that transcends rivers, language, and myths, forging a narrative where a king becomes immortal, leaving behind a legacy as enduring as the ground trodden by warriors' feet. In the shadow of the Amanus Mountains, wedged between the craggy terrain and the shimmering blue Mediterranean, lay the field of Issus. It was as if nature itself had crafted this narrow strip of land for a clash that would alter the course of empires. Alexander, ever the tactician, recognised immediately that these constraints offered him a chance to counterbalance the overwhelming numbers of the Persian army. The crisp chill of autumn painted the landscape in hues of ochre and sienna, a haunting prelude to the blood that would soon soak the earth. Far to the east, King Darius III of Persia gathered his forces, intent on preserving the glory of an empire that spanned from the Indus to the Nile. His army, a serpentine mass wending its way through dusty trails, embodied the full weight of Persian might and tradition. Darius, adorned in armour of gold, could not afford defeat. The Persian Empire's prestige hinged on subduing the audacious Macedonian, who dared threaten its borders. Yet even as he moved with the deliberation befitting his station, whispers of doubt crept among his advisors, memories of prior defeat still fresh and raw. The stage was set for battle. As dawn broke, the metallic clatter of shields echoed across the field, a deafening symphony accompanying the approaching storm of war. Alexander's phalanx, a testament to disciplined coordination, moved as a single entity, spears braced against the imminent Persian wave. Mounted upon his steadfast Bucephalus, Alexander rode the lines, his presence a vital spark igniting the courage of his men. To yield was disgrace, to hold their only salvation. In the cacophony of combat, where iron met iron in brutal duet, the Macedonians held firm. Alexander, driven by a restless hunger for victory, charged relentlessly against the Persian centre. His aim was singular and audacious, to meet Darius face to face amidst the chaos. As Bucephalus thundered forward, Alexander was a blur of energy and resolve, his sword cleaving a path through flesh and fury alike. Darius, caught amid his chariots and the swirling dust of battle, faced the realization that momentum had shifted. When Alexander's charge broke through the defensive lines, it became more than an assault. It was a meteoric strike at the heart of Persian command. Confronted with the prospect of capture, fear overtook duty, and Darius fled, his retreat a haunting image of regal defeat scattered across the blood-stained fields of Issus. After the clamour subsided, with victory assured, Alexander took stock of his spoils. Among them, the family of Darius, now hostages within the confines of his strategy. Demonstrating both calculated kindness and political acumen, Alexander treated them with dignity, harnessing their captivity as a tool of propaganda. He fashioned himself not as a brute force, but as a sovereign with a mind for statesmanship. This encounter at Issus was a seismic shift. The once unassailable Persian Empire now faced tremors of doubt and defection. Darius's flight rippled through his domain. Loyalty, once a given, turned fluid. Alexander capitalized on these cracks, extending promises and opportunities, painting his conquests not merely as domination, but as liberation. Yet for the Macedonian soldiers who fought bravely beside Alexander, triumph came with its own shadows. War's aftermath bore no mercy, as the echoes of battle pursued them into their dreams, where triumph and terror entwined. In the flickering light of campfires, they found solidarity in shared tales of ghostly recollection, the unsanitized truths of life, as a warrior under their king. Alexander himself, though burdened with the mantle of conqueror, was not immune to the strains of war. In moments of reflection, the threads of mortality weighed heavily on him, spurring introspection on the empire he'd begun to weave. He sought a means to reconcile the grandeur of his vision with the fragility of human spirit, aware that his success hinged upon nurturing the resolve and loyalty of those who followed him into the abyss. In this consequential blending of cultures that followed Issus, a new dawn emerged, seeded with the exchange of ideas, Greek thought entwined with Persian customs, knitting a rich fabric of mutual influence. Cities became crucibles of this synthesis, vibrant centres where Greek and Persian knowledge blossomed into a Hellenistic world, transforming territories into hubs of philosophy and artistry. Through this fusion, even Alexander fell under the spell of Persian grandeur, adopting elements into his own court, a decision that sparked both admiration and controversy. Yet his vision transcended tradition, seeking a unifying legacy woven from diverse threads, a tapestry of humanity's shared potential. The resonance of Issus underscored the imperial dynamics at play, a canvas upon which Alexander painted not only his ambitions, but those of an era marked by the ebb and flow of power. Even amid debates over his methods and intentions, Alexander's imprint reached far beyond the immediate horizon, an enduring testament to the transformative forces he unleashed upon the ancient world. In the far-flung reaches of the ancient world, Tyre stood resolute, an island city that glistened like a crown jewel atop the Mediterranean's shimmering expanse. It was no ordinary conquest for Alexander the Great. Known for its impregnable walls and maritime prowess, Tyre symbolised wealth and independence, an entity that defiantly straddled a thin line between legend and reality. Unlike other mainland cities felled before the Macedonian advance, Tyre's defenders were seasoned mariners and astute merchants, renowned for their cunning and resolve. To them, Alexander was merely another marauding sovereign. His ambition was transient, echoing the steps of predecessors whose dreams had been lost to history. Yet for Alexander, besieging Tyre became not just a strategic imperative, but a personal trial, a labyrinthine ordeal against the elements and human tenacity. As months slipped by and Mediterranean gales hammered its shores, Tyre's defiance grew legendary, transcending the status of mere city to become a beacon of resistance. Set amidst its formidable naval fortress, Tyre's audacity shadowed Alexander's campaign, marking a critical moment requiring ingenuity and perseverance. Thus, from those desolate coasts where the azure waves met Tyre's ramparts, Alexander crafted his audacious stratagem: a causeway. This visionary undertaking would bridge the sea's restless tides, anchoring his forces to Tyre's fortress heart. An epic gamble against nature's wrath and Tyrian archers, yet it was indispensable for victory. Day by day, massive boulders and debris emerged from the depths, sculpted into a solid spine stretching toward Tyre's defiant towers. In response, Tyrian engineers unleashed fiery arrows from nimble triremes, desperate to dismantle the burgeoning threat. Alexander's army braced against this tempest, engaged in a struggle, as much against time and tide as against mortal foes, each stone of the causeway reflecting an indomitable resolve. Within this colossal blueprint, Alexander deployed siege engines, war machines forged from the crucible of dire necessity. These thunderous artifices flung stones with devastating precision, their symphony resonating through the beleaguered city. Catapults and battering rams became more than mere tools. They were extensions of Alexander's ambition, inscribing a message in stone that Tyre's resistance would crumble. Yet the defenders met craft with craft. Reinforcing their walls and using leather screens to absorb impact, Tyre exhibited cunning that rivaled Macedonian innovation, a cerebral contest echoing across the ramparts. Inside Tyre, morale teetered under the siege's relentless gaze. Supplies dwindled while the waves lapped inexorably at their bastions, a haunting reminder of Alexander's unwavering presence. The city's leaders invoked history's grandeur in rallying cries as doubt meandered through bustling markets and sacred sanctuaries. The tension between past prestige and present peril underscored a narrative rich with human resilience, but fraught with testing the limits of endurance. Despite their formidable defences, Tyre would strike fearsome riposts from the sea. Their seafaring heritage launched fire ships, flaming vessels adrift with destruction in their wake, toward the Macedonian causeway, hoping to incite chaos among Alexander's ranks. These maritime leviathans evoked a symphony of flames dancing ominously against the horizon. Yet, the Macedonian navy responded with an equal measure of innovation, quelling these infernos with stoic urgency. It was a tactical ballet on turbulent waters where both sides relentlessly battled for supremacy. As the siege continued, intrigue and cunning moved like whispers beneath the waves. Alexander's spies infiltrated Tyre, unravelling its secrets and probing for weaknesses hidden amidst its mighty walls. Meanwhile, the Phoenician web of espionage sought to entangle the Macedonian ranks, whispering falsehoods and sowing discord. This shadow conflict was an age-old dance, giving shape to victories mapped by the currents of information stealthily exchanged. Finally, after 7 arduous months, the causeway reached Tyre's walls, marking the beginning of the end. Under the searing Mediterranean sun, Alexander commanded an all-out assault, combining infantry advances, naval bombardments, and the crushing might of siege engines into a momentous crescendo. Over, under, and through Tyrian defences, Macedonian soldiers poured like a relentless tide, each clash and cry piercing an epic tapestry of resistance. Despite their fierce valour, the Tyrian saga succumbed to history's inexorable march, less a military victory and more a perilous unveiling of grim destiny. Once the walls fell, chaos reigned. Tyre's sacking unfolded with a fury emblematic of siege warfare's immoral crescendo. Alexander, a tempest of resolve, led his army with impassive command, ending any thought of merciful quarters. Desolation descended, extinguishing Tyre's ancient brilliance with flames that consumed even sacred temples. The brutality framed in Tyre's demise haunted history, reflecting the dark necessities of conquest, the perpetual struggle etched into the ever-turning cycle of human ambition. After the fires, as the city lay in ruins, smoke unveiled a landscape reshaped by ruthless strategy and persistent might. Tyre, a beacon of Phoenician prosperity, whispered grim warnings across distant shores, asserting Alexander's dominance. But amidst the remnants, a more profound truth lay. An unwritten promise within enduring tales, surviving conquerors' rampant whims, continually nurturing rebirth. Tyre's fall imprinted a lasting mark on Macedonian strategy, shaping future sieges and tactics from Egypt to India, cementing its place as a symbol of audacity, a saga immortalised through whispering winds, archetypes of unyielding wills and burgeoning dreams. In 332 BCE, Alexander stepped onto the sun-drenched sands of Egypt, anticipating resistance but finding celebration instead. The Egyptians, burdened by the oppressive yoke of Persian rule, saw in him not a conqueror, but a gleaming figure of liberation. The Persian satrap had fled, leaving a vacuum that Alexander filled with ceremony, and an aura promising the restoration of ancient customs. As he ascended the throne once graced by great pharaohs, he embraced not only a political role, but a profound cultural transformation. By intertwining his image with Egyptian deities, he began to construct a legacy that was both Macedonian and Egyptian, a fusion that would sway the hearts of his newfound subjects. Aware of the need for divine legitimacy, Alexander embarked on a treacherous journey into the Libyan desert, seeking answers from the legendary Oracle of Siwa. His path was fraught with shifting sands and punishing heat, yet he pressed on, determined to unravel the whispers of destiny that clung to him like a spectral cloak. Guided by the reverent Berber tribesmen, he reached the secluded sanctuary dedicated to Ammon. The words of the oracle, delivered in a haze of incense and mystery, purportedly confirmed what Alexander yearned to believe. He was the son of Zeus Ammon, a declaration that redefined not only his rule, but his very self-conception. The truth of this divine endorsement, whether genuine prophecy or calculated manipulation, remains shrouded in ambiguity, yet it entrenched his belief in his celestial role, elevating his aspirations to the refulgent glow of immortality. Empowered by Siwa's revelation, Alexander embraced a dual identity as both ruler and deity, a powerful blend that resonated deeply with the spiritual traditions of Egypt. To his subjects, Alexander stood not merely as a king, but as a living god, a divine channel through which cosmic order flowed. His actions were thus painted with the sacred brush of Ma'at, ensuring harmony and prosperity within the land he commanded. This transformation from mortal monarch to divine intermediary was not only political theatre, it was a personal metamorphosis that mirrored the mystical union of heavens and earth in the Egyptian mind. Through ceremonies steeped in centuries-old customs, Alexander wielded authority that transcended force, fortifying his empire with spiritual legitimacy. Yet his ambitions stretched beyond spiritual metamorphosis. On the Mediterranean coast, Alexander founded Alexandria, crafting a city that would stand as a monument to cultural synthesis and enduring legacy. It was a vision forged in marble and sandstone, a meeting ground for the diverse peoples of the Hellenistic world. Under his guidance, Alexandria burgeoned into a vibrant hub of trade and learning. It became a beacon where the intellectual currents of Greece mingled with the ancient wisdom of Egypt, fostering an exchange that enriched and reshaped the Mediterranean landscape. For the Egyptians, the role of pharaoh carried expectations far exceeding mere governance. As the earthly link to the divine, Alexander was not only expected to command armies, but to sustain the delicate equilibrium of Ma'at. His reign was entwined with ritual and reverence, fostering an image of a leader deeply connected to the spiritual life of his people. This respect for tradition and religious duty endeared him to his subjects, cementing a bond that went beyond the transitory ambitions of conquerors past. To the Egyptian populace, he was more than a successor. He was a restorer of sacred order and custodian of their heritage. The fusion of Greek and Egyptian traditions under Alexander's rule was neither cursory nor superficial. It rippled through art, architecture, and thought, creating a tapestry of cultural interplay that enriched the empire. Temples arose where Greek and Egyptian gods shared sanctuaries, embodying the harmonious convergence of two worlds. Intellectual figures gathered in Alexandria, cultivating a fertile ground for philosophical and scientific exploration. This exchange created an environment where innovation thrived and ancient knowledge was reinvigorated by fresh perspectives. While Alexander may have seemed to embrace his divine status, skepticism lingers about whether this was a sincere conviction or a political maneuver to solidify his reign. By casting himself as a god, he cleverly justified his authority, appealing to diverse cultural groups within his empire. His divine kingship, whether rooted in genuine belief or calculated strategy, served as a potent means of maintaining control and mystique, influencing both his contemporaries and the annals of history. Under Alexander's influence, Egypt's economy and trade flourished. Infrastructure expanded, new roads traced the contours of the Nile, and ports like Alexandria pulsed with bustling commerce. These economic developments were not coincidental. They were strategic underpinnings designed to weave Egypt seamlessly into the Hellenistic fabric. By cultivating prosperity, Alexander ensured stability, laying foundations that supported the empire long after his mortal light dimmed. Yet beneath his godly veneer, ironies of conquest simmered. His claims of divine right met both reverence and resistance. While Egypt embraced him, further campaigns demanded relentless human exertion against stubborn realities. The divine aura surrounding his conquest often tangled with the gritty truths of empire building, revealing that even a self-proclaimed god could find limits against the varied landscapes of human belief. As he prepared to leave Egypt behind, with ambitions knitting the threads of further conquests, Alexander's legacy was cemented. Egypt, now the jewel of his expanding empire, from where he sought to stretch his dominion further into history. The city of Alexandria would stand as a testament to these aspirations, a luminous chapter in his sweeping saga, forever casting its shadow across the pages of time. In the grand tapestry of history, few battles held more significance than the impending clash at Gaugamela. Darius III of Persia, humiliated by previous defeats, summoned the might of his empire, assembling a formidable army with soldiers from Babylon to Bactria, Egypt to distant India. This was not just a muster of men, but a gathering of the Eastern world, united under the Achaemenid banner, aiming to annihilate the Macedonian upstart. With his sprawling force, each soldier clad in unique armaments and guided by diverse rituals of war, Darius sought to redeem his honour and secure the future of his empire. Meanwhile, Alexander of Macedon readied himself with equal resolve. Having forged a legend across the deserts and rivers, this battle, he knew, would shape the fate of empires. His force, though fewer in number, was a brotherhood of battle-hardened veterans, held together by shared struggles for survival and glory. With a gait not of ostentatious ceremony, but driven purpose, Alexander inspired his troops, kindling within them a yearning for honour that could carve their names into eternity. As the day of battle neared, the air crackled with anticipation, a storm gathering, heavy with destiny. The plains of Gaugamela near modern-day Mosul, Iraq, stretched vast and unbroken, a sea of opportunity, handpicked by Darius for strategic advantage. Its expanse seemed perfect for his chariots and cavalry, a spectacle of numbers meant to overwhelm. Engineers had flattened the land further, eliminating obstacles, integrating centuries' worth of Persian strategies born of conflict. Yet, the vastness that promised advantage to Persia also beckoned strategy from the Macedonian king, who, despite daunting odds, saw potential where others foresaw death. As dawn broke, two colossal armies faced one another under a merciless sky. Alexander's phalanx stood like a forest of spears, an embodiment of interlinked resilience. Cavalry waited at the flanks, horses pawing the earth with anticipation. Alexander, clad not in royal splendour but in practical attire, symbolised command grounded in modesty, underscored by audacious ambition. His plan was a daring leftward swing to distort Darius's carefully plotted symphony of war. Across the field, the Persian army unfurled a panorama of power, chariots poised to tear through lines. Elephants stood, their massive tusks primed to sow chaos. Darius himself, under his royal standard, cut an imposing figure, a symbol of defiance amid the grandeur of empire. His strategy focused on enveloping Alexander with sheer numbers, yet a glint of unease betrayed his stoic facade, hinting at cracks in his courtly armour. When the battle lines finally engaged, the world seemed to pause. It was as if history held its breath before exploding into chaos. Dust rose in whirls, obscuring friend from foe, the living from the dead. Alexander's phalanx advanced in eerie precision, a wall of shields and spears pressing forward amid the cacophony. Darius unleashed his scythed chariots, intending to shatter the Macedonian ranks. Yet Alexander had anticipated this. With calculated ease, his troops opened paths within their lines, allowing chariots through before soldiers dispatched them on the other side. Amid this maelstrom, Alexander saw an opportunity. Seizing his chance with mythic boldness, he directed his elite cavalry, not just into battle's heart, but towards its serpent head, Darius himself. His charge was a spectacle, a sudden strike across the sky, With his trusted Bucephalus, he surged like a bolt, a symbol of raw Macedonian courage. From his high vantage, Darius witnessed his plans crumble. Caught in chaos, Alexander's approach kindled within him a struggle between fight and flight. As Alexander and his companions drew near, Darius's resolve cracked. He turned, fleeing the field in fear, a signal that changed his troops' fate. What was organised disintegrated into retreat as the Persian army unravelled. With unyielding intent, Alexander's men pursued, transforming strategy into sheer instinct, a primal chase as one ruler pursued another to the conflict's tipping point. Darius's retreat ignited disorder. Disorder birthed panic, and panic split Persian lines as they attempted to flee a net cast by relentless Macedonian pursuit. As the sun sunk behind distant hills, Gaugamela became a field of shadows and echoes, triumph painted with sacrifice. Alexander's victory was unequivocal. Yet, amid the clamour, a darker truth emerged. Triumph, bought with blood both familiar and distant, reminded the living of future battles yet to unfold. Whispers of exhaustion wove through triumphant cries, a longing for the peace obscured by conquest glamour, an acknowledgement of empires that offered little respite as the day closed. Victory at Gaugamela unlocked Persian wealth, a cornucopia of riches revealing Achaemenid opulence. In treasures, Macedonians saw more than wealth, dreams tangible, gilded, real. Yet for Alexander, the spoils fueled a vision beyond power, a cultural synthesis east and west, unified in singular glory. Here arose the opportunity to immortalise himself in mythic grandeur. Gaugamela's fall marked Persia's eclipse, an empire undone not by one blow, but weakened across its expanse. As Persian centres like Persepolis faced new rulers, Alexander's path intertwined governance, Hellenistic ideas, and challenges within this new realm. Persia, both a crown jewel and crucible of trials, tested Alexander's rule. Beyond Gaugamela, ripples of victory grew to waves reaching far shores. Alexander's legend, mortal yet mythic, spanned horizons in whispered tales. His triumph was met with awe and trepidation, equating to epic deeds revered in ancient Greece. In lands unknown, Alexander's legacy formed a tapestry, threads weaving myth and reality, a testament to the relentless reach of power and lasting legacy, even as kingdoms echoed under his singular, unprecedented shadow. Alexander and his battle-worn army left the familiar lands behind, crossing the daunting Hindu Kush mountains. This arduous passage wasn't just a geographical conquest, it was a test of human endurance against nature's harshest trials. The air thinned, and the threat of avalanches loomed, such that even the stout-hearted felt the chill of despair. Yet, stories of untold riches and mysterious lands whispered through the ranks, rekindling the resolve of those who had followed Alexander thus far. Once they breached the mountains' formidable barriers, a land of vibrant colour unfurled before them. India, with its strange flora, intoxicating scents and resplendent landscapes. Here the world seemed alive with dangers and wonders, a mosaic of vivid life and lurking threats. The locals watched, intrigued yet wary of these foreign invaders. Whispers of powerful armies and the formidable war elephants that stood in their path reached Alexander's ears. To the seasoned warriors of Macedonia, these creatures of legend were tangible symbols of fear and reverence. Yet Alexander, drawn by the mystery of the unknown, pressed forward, his ambition urging him to conquer and to know. The Hydaspes River became the stage for one of Alexander's greatest trials. King Porus awaited him, a figure shrewd and courageous, commanding an army flanked by the awe-inspiring elephants. They were beasts of immense stature, armoured and ominous, casting long shadows on the battlefield. The ground shook with their approach, and for a moment fear fluttered through the Macedonian ranks. However, Alexander's strategic brilliance once more turned potential disaster into triumph. He adapted quickly. Archers targeted the mahouts atop the elephants, and swift cavalry manoeuvres broke the line of these ponderous giants, transforming uncertainty into an unprecedented victory. Despite the victory and the respectful alliance offered to Porus, the journey through India revealed a land of bewildering customs. The soldiers encountered religions and traditions far removed from their understanding, rituals devoted to unknown deities, philosophies like reincarnation, and intricate social hierarchies expanded their worldview. They marvelled at the economic riches, silk, spices, and the architectural wonders of cities that rivaled their own Greek domains in sophistication. But as the march continued, fatigue set in. The men, having been away from their homeland for years, grew weary of endless conquest. They missed their families, resisted further battles, and felt the burden of an empire that seemed insatiable. This weariness festered into dissent along the Bees River, where the soldiers finally voiced their longing to return home. They sought respite, not more warfare or the hollow glory of endless conquest. Alexander, confronted not by an enemy army, but by the quiet rebellion of his own men, faced a reckoning. At the Hyphasis River, the mutiny forced Alexander to listen, to negotiate rather than command. The troops stood firm, their resolve unbroken, insisting that their journey end here. Recognising the unity of his forces was more valuable than further conquest, Alexander compromised. He reminded them of their shared victories and the treasure and stories awaiting them back home, opting for understanding over autocracy. This decision, a strategic withdrawal rather than a defeat, highlighted Alexander's humanity beneath his godlike ambition. Retreating towards the west, the army retraced its steps, collecting spoils and securing alliances that would sow the seeds of a Hellenistic culture across these lands. The once foreboding landscapes now felt more familiar, and in their wake, they left fledgling cities and Greek-inspired administration that would ripple through time. Cultural exchanges flourished, Greek language and philosophies entwined with local Indian thought, planting roots for new ideas and innovations. In these moments of reflection, Alexander pondered his insatiable dreams. His aspirations stretched beyond mortal confines, yet the companionable darkness of night revealed a profound melancholy. He dreamed of further conquests, Arabia, Carthage, while grappling with the reality of governance, the need for consolidation instead of mere annexation. His empire, vast and diverse, required careful stewardship, a task daunting even for a man of legendary ambition. The legacy of Alexander outshone even the vast territories he conquered. His influence spurred a cultural renaissance that transcended the boundaries of his empire. The merging of Greek and Indian philosophies, the spread of Hellenistic art, and scientific inquiry became the enduring testament of his campaigns. Though his life was brief, and his empire eventually fragmented, the mosaic he crafted inspired generations, setting the stage for new epochs of exploration and cultural synthesis. An icon of ambition and innovation, Alexander left behind a legend that continues to illuminate the path of history, inspiring tales of conquest matched only by the human spirit's quest for greatness. The sun was setting on Alexander the Great's conquests. casting long shadows over Babylon in 323 BCE. This grand tapestry of his empire shimmered with victories from plundered temples to defeating entire armies. Yet beneath this dazzling aura lurked an insatiable hunger for immortality. Fresh from his campaigns in India, Alexander dreamed of more. Arabia and Carthage were next on his celestial map. But as Babylon loomed large in his plans, the sun seemed dimmer, as if aware of the gathering clouds of fate. Those close to him saw not an unbreakable god-king, but a man burdened with the weight of his own epic shadow. There was an unspoken fragility about him, visible in late-night wrestling with nightmares that seemed to peel away the grandeur of his legend, revealing mortal weakness beneath. In Babylon's mysterious air, omens seemed to swirl like shadows cast in the flickering light of sacred fires. Stories of ill fate hung heavy in the air, woven through with the scents of incense. Alexander, whose consultations with oracles were as regular as any battle campaign, found himself surrounded by whispers of birds falling and temple fires extinguishing inexplicably. Yet he, with his Aristotle-hardened skepticism, treated these portents like idle tales, laughing at signs of Zeus himself if seen in the evening glow. Even so, the invisible grip of destiny tightened around him. The irony was rich and dark. The man who sought to conquer the world could not foresee the cryptic checks written against his own divine tales by fate's gnarled hand. Amid swelling clouds of doom, Alexander hosted a banquet in early June, a jubilant testament to past victories and grand designs for the future. Lavish as any scene from Homeric verse, the gathering was a glittering, golden landscape of celebration, where dignitaries marvelled at his wealth, poured out like Midas's touch upon tables set ablaze with opulence. Yet beneath the luxury lay dark shadows. It may have been at this feast that Alexander first wavered, a foreboding spectre clashing with the mortal revelry. Chroniclers like Plutarch hinted at whispers of betrayal, the echoes of laughter, perhaps masking insidious intent. Rumours sprouted that one among his intimate circle might have delivered a more profound poison, coating fate's dark offering in communal wine. As the vibrant flame of life flickered, Alexander faced an adversary no mighty phalanx could dislodge. What began as trifles of discomfort grew into a thunderous roar of fever and decline. Stripped of his godlike endurance, his body languished upon a bed of velvet and linen, while his spirit slipped, waning, into hallucinatory realms. The court physicians, revered in strategy but powerless against their divine patient's malady, watched helplessly, their ministrations ineffective against the virulent spectre that assailed him. Meanwhile, his companions, once invincible on battlefields, could do nothing, as their once invincible leader lay quieted by invisible chains. The might of Babylon saw its conqueror subdued by a force not of this earth, but perhaps of the earth itself, an irony as profound as his triumphs. Rumours of poisoning remain vibrant, enshrouding the end of Alexander's saga in mystery. Was a planted toxin the silent footman guiding him to Hades' gates? Or was it a desperate act by a power-hungry hand in the shadows of his sprawling regime? The court, a fertile ground for tales whispered across centuries, painted vivid conspiracies. Some speculated an ambitious regent, Antipater perhaps, steadied by necessity, ensured that history's path would be treacherously shifted. Despite millennia of scrutiny, no truth emerges bright enough to dissolve the shadow entwining his demise, a shadow that, like a ghost, haunts the battlefield of his legacy. Yet nature's cruel hand holds equal claim over Alexander's destiny. The relentless march through diverse climes brought him face to face with hidden spectres worse than any warrior. Disease, typhoid perhaps, or another bedraggled fever from the lands of Punjab. This fever, impervious to ambition or strategy, eroded his mortality. A stealthy assault launched not by crowns or armies, but from the very soil he had conquered. His divine march collapsing was not to the eastern resistance, but to microscopic invaders, equal in ferocity and invisible in their insidious assault. As life's arc descended into silence, Alexander's final hours saw might reduced, a mournful reflection of power rendered to shadows. His adherents circled his bed, the final mass for a figure once larger than life. Quiet voices cast farewells into the void, words heavy with tears. Those who stood beside him in glory could offer only reverence as dust cloaks stillness, an unyielding reminder that even gods can die. In his stillness, Alexander transcended fear, his eyes shining with yearning for yet new horizons, even as time's advantage claimed victory. Alexander's hand now limp, his empire, a masterpiece of ambition, frayed. His generals, once united in singular purpose, now scavenged the remnants, each claiming fragments of the mosaic crafted. The grand Hellenistic age, marked by cultural rift and consolidation, spiralled forward from his unmoored legacy. Alexander's final journey became myth, his remains desired even in death. Legend held his form defied decay, a celestial tribute to his grandeur. His burial, a tale untold, placed him in sepulchral glory, fittingly peregrined for the world's conqueror. Around him, myth and legacy swirled, embedding him in the human psyche as the eternal conqueror, his narrative circling history's firmament, a deity in life, a legend in death. Thank you for watching this epic tale of Alexander the Great. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like, subscribe, and join us as we uncover more stories from the past.